everyone, welcome to our Young Healthwatch Hillingdon podcast. From Young Healthwatch today, we have with us myself. Hi, I'm Ellie, I'm 16, and I'm a volunteer with Young Healthwatch, and I've been volunteering for about a year now. We also have Khadija.
I just recently joined Young Healthwatch because I'm quite interested in medicine.
And we also have with us our manager, Kim.
Hi guys, my name is Kim. I'm the Community Engagement Officer for Children and Young People at Healthwatch, and I support Young Healthwatch.
We are a group of young people who aim to educate other young people about their mental and physical health. We decided to make a podcast in order to reach more people and share our experiences, but most importantly, help you guys.
So today we're here to talk about exam and school stress. And today we have the expert panel from P3 and Kooth with Nick, Shadia, and Holly. So would you guys like to tell us a bit about yourselves?
Yeah, so hello, I'm Nick. I'm a senior wellbeing worker at P3 and I work with Shadia.
Hi, I'm Shadia. I'm also a wellbeing worker at P3. We support young people who need advice and support around different things to do with their health and wellbeing.
And I'm Holly. I'm from Kooth. I'm an IMP worker, and I'm also one of the online emotional wellbeing practitioners at Kooth.
What is Kooth, Holly? Just out of interest, sorry.
Yeah, Kooth is a free online mental health service. It's been commissioned by the CCGs in Hillingdon, so it means it's free for young people aged 11 to 25 to use. So you can come on and speak to a counsellor anonymously, or you can look through forum boards and online magazine articles. So it's a mental health platform.
Amazing, thank you.
So the topic of today's podcast is school stress, and we're hoping to get a view from our expert panel on school stress, including how to focus in lessons and time management, stress before, during and after exams, and to highlight how learning styles might impact on how people cope. So Khadija, do you want to start by sharing some school experiences?
So quite recently, I had a very stressful time because I had a huge biology test coming. And Ellie knows about this. I cried so much because I was so stressed that now I have eczema under my eyes because, I cried for hours and hours. And I struggle a lot with revision and finding the right revision style for me and remembering a lot of the content. And also we have a test every week, so it can be quite stressful.
Yeah, I'll bet. My goodness. What about you, Ellie? Any recent nerve-wracking moments?
With the biology test, also have one every Thursday, which kind of brings a downer to the week. Dreading that Thursday. So I was wondering if our specialists had anything to say about what we could do during and after the exams to help reduce the stress levels.
Definitely. Well, I think before an exam is key to how you're going to feel during and after. So the steps that you take before. So the exams that you do every week, are they like mocks or do they go towards your grade?
They're multi-topic tests, so they'll be on the things that we've learned so far. So it's quite stressful, but they kind of add up to the final.
Yeah. But then I guess they're good in a way because then it shows what areas you need to go and do extra revision on. So I think as long as you're, trying your best, when you get into the exam, you can only do your best with what you know, with what resources you've had, the effort you've had, that's all you can do. And then after, it's like what you were saying as well, Ellie, with friends telling you things or bringing it up after, and it can be quite stressful because then you're like, oh, I might have done that question wrong. So I think the key is trying to, after an exam, have fun. So schedule in to go with your friends to the cinema, because something like the cinema as well, you won't really be talking about it and it will take your mind off it. Then you'll be talking about the film after, and then you'll go home and then you can just chill. So I think that's key.
I guess you can even do that now, even in the current social restrictions, because if you do something like Netflix party, you can still have that experience, can't you? And it's just distracting.
Definitely.
And I also think something really important that Nick said was scheduling in that time for yourself. So I know there's a big thing around pre-exams, scheduling in revision time. So, you know, making sure you start revising early before the exam so you're not cramming towards the end. But also that's equally as important is scheduling some time for yourself and to have breaks and to rest, because I think we can get really carried away when we're on a bit of a roll when we're revising, and, you know, can sit there and hours can go by. But I think in the end of things, the most important thing is also looking after your own well-being in order to do best in your exam. So, you know, if you haven't had enough sleep, if you haven't had breakfast, you're not going to be able to work to your best abilities. So ensuring that you also kind of schedule in time for those different things throughout your revision period, as well as running up to the exam, are really, really important, just to make sure you can go in there and know that you've done everything you can, you've done your best, but you've also made sure you've given yourself a bit of a rest as well.
Definitely.
Do you guys find it easy to do that, like to kind of go, oh, do you know what, no, I've done like an hour, I need to take a bit of I can see your faces that I think I know what the answer might be here, because I used to struggle with that. I'd be like, no, I've got to cram it all in.
Yeah, I'm pretty organized, honestly, but we're doing the IB, so it's 7 subjects, and you can never find time to actually take some time out to yourself, and we're always working. There's always more work to do, and especially if you're taking sciences, it's a lot more work.
Yeah, I think especially because, like, seeing as we do have a test regularly, it's kind of hard to sort of just stop and sort of, because there's always something to do. Like, I'll stop for a minute and then I'll just feel guilty about not doing it because I know that it's going to stress me out that I'm not doing it. So then, I don't know, I feel like on the weekend, so I usually take one day where I just don't do any work, but I feel like that's okay for this year. But perhaps next year when I have big exams, that's sort of gonna, you know, weigh me down a bit. Then I was wondering if you have any tips on how to focus in lessons, because I think that would help with, then you won't have as much to do when you get home because you will have like brought the information from school.
Good question.
Definitely, I think that's a really good question to have, because sometimes I remember being in lessons, sometimes they drag a little bit and you think, oh, I can't pay attention anymore. So I think what's the best thing to do is when you have that feeling where you're like, oh, I haven't been listening for the last 5 minutes, to just try to bring yourself back into the room and just be like, oh, okay, I need to start focusing now, and just take a deep breath. That's all you can do. Try not to worry about that you've maybe have wasted the last 5 minutes just thinking, daydreaming. Don't worry about that, because you can always go back through and catch up with the notes. But you just, from that moment there, just try to be like, okay, I'm going to try and focus for the next 20 minutes of the lesson, for example, and just jotting down notes, anything that might help you. If you like drawing, sometimes some students really like to draw while the teacher talks about things that are happening, especially in like biology and things like that. If you can draw out something that will help, you just need to find what works for you, really.
Because there's been a load of research, hasn't there, around doodling and like small toys to play with while you're listening. And now they even have fidget toys on some tables in conferences, or in training sessions for, you know, for professionals, because they've realized that actually you activate the brain in a different way, and you're more able to absorb if you've got something to kind of fiddle with and play with. I don't think schools want fidget spinners back though. No.
And I think as well, in lessons, sometimes it's not always you. Like sometimes the teaching style isn't for you.
Definitely.
So like some lessons you might be like, oh, I love that lesson. And it might be because you really like the topic. It might be because you really get on well with like the teacher and how they teach. And I think what really helps as well to focus is actually like participating in the lesson. So asking questions, getting involved, even answering questions if the teacher asks. And I know normally everyone's like, I don't really want to say. But more often than not, even if you're not sure, everyone else is glad if you're like, I actually don't know. Because then the teacher will explain. So
always get your hand up fast, because then you've answered a question and they won't pick on you then.
Exactly. Get in there before them.
Top tip.
think that also builds on kind of like some revision skills as well, because it can be that, you know, you've written down notes and then you read over your notes and it may not be as effective. It's more so effective if you find loads of different ways to kind of process your revision. So one of those ways could be participating in class, because it could be just one thing that you've answered or one thing that you've asked a question about, and that thing could stick as well. And it could also be just in your own revision time outside of the classroom, finding different ways that work best for you. You know, I think we touched on the fact that people are different learners. So it could be that you're a visual learner, you like to have kind of mood boards and those spider diagrams and things all over your walls. Or it could be that maybe you learn better when you listen to things. So it could be watching a video online of someone describing it. You know, it's revision isn't the, when you say fun, I don't think you kind of think of revision straight away, but it's to try and make it as creative and fun as you possibly can, just by kind of taking part in loads of different types of revision. That's definitely what kind of tipped the point for me during my period in school, was that I started revising using loads of different things like note cards, sticking things up on the wall, you know, diagrams. It can just engage you that little bit more. And sometimes things stick where you don't realize that they have. And it could be something like Nick said, just by participating in class.
I've got a question for everybody, really. We've kind of touched on learning styles to help with focusing in class and for revision. Does anyone kind of think they know which learning style they might be? So you can be auditory, so where you hear, you know, you listen and you learn better that way. Visual, like Shadia said, you know, diagrams and images and things. And then I think is it kinesthetic, where you learn by doing something? And there's more, but I'm definitely not an expert in this area. Ellie, what do you think works for you?
Yeah, so I actually discovered last year that I don't actually retain information unless I've watched a video on it, which was
really?
it was a hard process, because I was like not retaining anything until I started realizing why. But basically, last year I had a really hard time because my teacher, well, he couldn't really teach that well, and we had quite a bad class. So it was like overall I wasn't really learning anything. And this was science, so for me one of the hardest subjects. So then I just realized that I was going to have to self-teach myself 3 sciences. So I was like, great, this is wonderful. So I started to like try out different research, like revision methods. And then I found a guy on YouTube who my British science people will probably know, Free Science Lessons, very great guy. But he like does every single video on science, and everyone watched him. Like everyone in the entire like UK British school system relies on this guy to like get them through GCSE science.
Wow.
Yeah, so like I watched every single one of his videos, and that actually really helped me. Like now I know that when I will have like written all my notes, I like retained some information, but to truly like get it into my head, I have to watch a video.
I think we've got a link to that below, just in case that might help someone.
Yeah.
What about you, Khadija?
Well, to be honest, for me, ever since I was little, I used to like playing teachers. And recently as well, I discovered that when I'm talking to my friend on the phone or something while I'm revising, I actually remember stuff if I teach them what I've been learning. So I can make my notes. But if I teach them and I keep going over it so let's say the person doesn't even understand the subject, I will teach it to them until they know the whole topic, and then I'll know it. So when I go into the test, that's the part that I always do well on. So,
that's a really interesting approach, and I wonder if people haven't necessarily thought of that. It's like study buddies, where you maybe educate each other in bits that the other one is less confident.
And sometimes I just act like I'm teaching someone. I have a
Yeah.
whiteboard, so I write on the board. I'm just like, listen, everyone. I teach myself.
And you're talking it out, aren't you? So it's adding another layer to not just reading it, but like verbalizing it as well.
Yeah.
That's really cool. What about other top tips, guys, for how about like actually managing stress now?
Managing stress, sorry, I was going to say, like a routine is key.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this like timetable thing that I always used to use when I was doing my degree at uni, and I think it was called like a CBT weekly planner. So you put in there, so start from Monday and plan like your whole week out. So put in like when you've got school, when you're going to do your homework or revision and stuff like that, but also plan your fun.
Yeah.
And then like after revision, what your self-care activity or reward is going to be. And that actually then reinforces, because like we were saying earlier, when you stop doing work but you still feel guilty, it's like you've just been at school all day, then you've done however many hours of homework or revision, you have to draw a line and then have the fun part in the evening as well, every evening. It can't be constant fun, and it can't be constant study, so it has to be like a good balance. So I think that's key for stress in general.
I think specifically when we talk about maybe stress in the exam hall, I don't know if you guys have ever experienced that sort of blackout of information where you knew that you know this stuff, but when you're in the exam hall, I think the stress can get to you so much that you just forget. And I think the important thing to remember in that moment is that the information is still up there. You still did learn it and you do know it. You're just feeling probably quite a lot of anxiety. And I think something really important is just to bring yourself back to the room. And that can be through like breathing techniques. So, breathe in for 4, hold it, and then breathe out for 7. Or it could be through something as simple as just looking around the room, taking note of the things that are around you. Okay, what's the time? How many circles can I see in the room? Loads of different techniques like that you can find, which whatever suits you best, but just something that will take you a couple minutes and kind of clear your mind that little bit, and then you're able to go back in and continue with the rest of your work. So I think the worst thing is getting stuck in that cycle of thinking, I don't know it, I can't remember it, I don't know it, I can't remember it. But definitely I think that's something that's super important when you're actually in the exam hall, just to try and manage some of that stress that inevitably, I think, as much as we prepare, there is always some stress that we have when we do go into the exam hall. But I think the more that we know that we can handle it, the less stressful those situations sort of feel.
I also think a really good way of managing stress is just to talk about it. So instead of letting it build up and become a really big thing that's not helpful, just try to talk about it. So with teachers, they're there for you. That's their job to teach you things. So if you don't understand something, do go to them and ask for help, because they'd be more than happy to help. Family and friends as well, you don't have to even talk about the revision, just to talk to them how you're going, how things are. If something is stressing you, share it out. A problem shared is a problem halved, as they say. So definitely try not to keep it to yourself, especially with friends. You've both said that this biology exam, maybe like if you speak to each other, become a study buddy and you can help each other out. So definitely try to manage stress through talking about it. That's really, really helpful.
I remember when I was really stressed about the exam, the test, all of my friends helped me feel a lot better and really confident. And after doing it, I felt really good about myself. The first half went really well. The second half I failed. I'm retaking it tomorrow, but it's okay. But at least my friends were there for me. And just as you said, you should talk about your stress. You shouldn't build it up, but in a way that you don't stress other people out around you as well. And also, Shadia mentioned some of the techniques that you could use to calm yourself down. I heard about this one technique. It's like the 5 senses technique, where you like try to find things that, like, 1 thing that you can hear, 2 things that you can feel, stuff like that. And it's really helped me over time to decrease my stress during tests. So it only takes a few minutes.
I've heard of that as well, but I wanted to bring this up because my brother, he's actually younger, he's 12 now, and he's had like a few exams, like not big exams, but they do the SATs at the end of year 6 in British school, and he's starting to have more tests now. And he can't cope in an exam situation because he is so stressed about the time. So he'll be looking at the clock like the entire time, and he can't like write anything because he's just too stressed about the time. So he'll end up like with a blank paper just because he's so stressed about it. And I struggled with this as well actually last year, because in English GCSE exams you have a very limited amount of time,
Yeah.
in which you have to write so much, which personally really stressed me out, because like I knew exactly what I wanted to say, I could have it all mapped out, but you just wouldn't have enough time to say it. So I was wondering what you would do about that. So if you're stressed in an exam about the time, how would you sort of look away from the time and focus on your paper?
That's such a good question. I think so many people probably experience that, or that moment where you've been writing, you glance up and it's like 12:05, and then you glance up what feels like 30 seconds later and it's 1:00 and your inner voice just screams.
Definitely. I think it's good to like have a quick flick through the exam paper and just see like how many questions there are and like how long they are, because it's always nearly like the beginning, like 3 or 4 pages, they're normally quite short, and then they start to get a bit more in depth, don't they? So I would say if you've got like 30 questions, you could say, okay, so if I spend about like 2 minutes on each one. And I think it's different as well, because like Ellie said as well, with the English exam, you have to practice how you're going to get that chunky essay into an exam where you're already stressed trying to remember everything, but you could have written it fine at home last night, but in the exam hall it's going to be different. But what I used to do is write it out and practice it, so like getting it in with that time frame, and then I'd go through and make 2 bullet points from each paragraph.
Ooh.
So then like what were my key points in each paragraph, and then from there, when I'd actually go into an exam hall, I'd start to remember just what my key points were, and then that helped me to build the rest of the writing. Yeah. But
where were you when I did my exams?
Yeah.
Probably doing yours.
But everyone's really different, aren't they? But yeah, that's literally what worked for me, because when you think you're never going to remember all of that in an exam, and I literally cut down a big essay into like a little A4 printout page of bullet points, and then I just stuck it on the wall next to my bed. So like before I went to sleep, or when I was just chilling, I'd just look over and just have a quick read and skim, and you know, after I've practiced it a few times, and it's in your head.
This might sound really obvious, and it doesn't necessarily apply for essay-based questions, but I used to go through the paper and look at the questions that I knew the answers to, and then I would just get rid of them really quickly. And then come back, because even if you know you're going to spend 2 minutes on each question, but you know you only need 30 seconds for those ones, it just gets those out of the way, and then you've got the rest of the time to work with. I found that quite helpful.
Yeah,
that definitely works. Or you could do the ones that are worth the most amount of marks, try to focus them first, then you know they're out of the way, and then you've only got like the short one answer ones to do at the end. So that's another way you could do it.
Yeah, and normally before I write essays, I do a short like structured plan. So like the introduction and some, as you said, some of the key points that are going to be in it. And when I didn't do my GCSEs, but when I was in year 10, our teacher gave us this list of words, and you can use them as like trigger words. So you can just make short notes, so it can help you remember what to do in the exam.
Oh wow. So what are the trigger words? Are they specific ones to each exam?
Yeah, specific to like each point that you're going to make. So kind of related to the book. So if you think about what book you're reading, and then the themes, and then the different things. So you should make like a list of the stuff. And also I feel like looking at the marks and then comparing it with how much time you have, then you can see how much time you can plan, and then how much time to write.
Definitely. That's a really good one. Definitely. There's been so many amazing practical tips. Like, yeah, really, really amazing. What about the kind of the emotional side of it? It'd be really good to kind of dig into that as well a little bit. Like, one thing that I should probably say at the end of the podcast, what I'm going to say now, is like, at some point we all face a hurdle or not passing something that we thought we were going to pass. And I think the big message that I know I personally want to share is that just because you fail a test or you fail an exam or you struggle with something, that is it's important to you in the moment, and rightfully so, but it doesn't make you a failure as a person. And that's so hard. And I think some people are really able to go, oh, do you know what, that's okay, I can come back to that. And Khadija, when you said that earlier, that just filled my heart. It really did. I was like, that's such a healthy attitude. Like, yeah, I've got to retake it, but I've got my friends and I'll do it and I'm cool. And then other times it feels like the end of the world. And this is not to diminish what anyone's feeling at all, because in that moment, what you're going through is absolutely imperative and important, and it is, and you have every right to feel like that. But remember, like, there are people around you that love you, there are things that you're amazing at, and if you have one of those moments, maybe just, you know, getting a friend and getting them to help you write down all of the things that are amazing about you can help you reflect in that moment that, like, it's important, but but it's not everything that you are.
Yeah,
I'd also to like say, because I don't know, I've just, for someone who's like going through the exam system now, like has been going through the exam system for years now, so I have like one thing that I basically just go by now, and it's just that everything happens for a reason. If you are failing a test, then I think it's the way that you look at it that really changes the entire concept of it. So say if I failed an exam, I won't think like, oh, I should have worked harder, I should have blah, blah, blah. But instead be like, oh, that happened for a reason. That's happened because now I know what I need to do. And I think that's like, it's come with time, because at first you'll always be like, oh no, like I failed the exam, and you'll probably be really upset, and that's like completely normal. But then it's just what outlook you take on that. And I just like to plug a YouTuber, an Instagram person who I follow, who is a study YouTuber, and her name's Unjaded Jade on Instagram. So Kim, if you could
write it down. For sure.
She has a YouTube channel, and she used to do study videos when she was doing her A-levels and GCSEs, which is why I started watching her, because I thought she could motivate me. But she basically got rejected from Oxford University, and she ended up in a different university. And she basically just speaks about what it's like to overcome something. Like, she says that one of the best things that ever happened to her was being rejected from Oxford, because she ended up at a university which she much like preferred, and she made amazing friends, and she had such amazing opportunities. And I think she really is like the one person that sort of helped me to change my attitude surrounding like grades and stuff, because I don't think she realizes that she's really like helping people with everything. So I think if you're going to follow anyone to do with studying, then don't follow the people who are going to, you know, drive you to do your best. Instead, follow people who are going to change your outlook on failing, because I think that is the most important thing, because passing isn't the be all and end all. Failing is also really great sometimes, because it's going to teach you things that passing never would.
That message nearly makes me cry. Can I just say, like, that made me a little bit emotional. So true. And you know, if you think hard enough, there's probably some time that any of us could think, oh no, that's like the worst thing that ever happened, and it turns out to be an opportunity. That's such a good message, Ellie. Go on.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we also have to remind people, like, I completely agree with Ellie, it's also not a competition between you and your peers. It's about you. You are your own person. You are completely separate from everyone else. That's why everyone takes the subjects that they're interested in. And I feel like everyone takes it as a huge competition. Oh, I need to be better than that person. But when you go to university, they're going to look at your application separately. They're not going to compare you to your entire class.
It's true.
So I feel like people need to take off the pressure of, oh, I'm dumber than this person. And maybe And you may be better than them at some topics, and they might be better than you at some topics. And I feel like people put too much pressure on themselves, people being me, but
No, I hear you. I relate.
but I feel like sometimes when you actually say it out loud, then you realize it. And yeah, I feel like we need to have a more positive outlook on things. And I completely agree with what Ellie said. Yeah.
Amazing.
That's so inspiring that you've already got that mindset to have at such a young age. I wish I could have been like that at school. So that's absolutely amazing. But yeah, as you said, just realizing that you're human, although you're doing maybe 11 GCSEs, 4 A levels, you're not going to be perfect at every single thing out there. That's just not humanly possible. So yeah, you're going to just try to identify what makes you you. So you might be really great at art, so just think, yeah, I might not be as great as maths as I'd like to be, but that's okay, because look how amazing I am at art. So yeah, that's so inspiring that you already think like that. Wow.
Yeah, it really is. It is amazing. How do you guys Shadia, Nick, Holly, like, how do you cope with stress? What are some top dealing with stress tips?
Mine probably would be identifying what stresses me out. So identifying what they say, like the trigger, for example, and then I can work on it that way. So just say it's writing exams that really stress me out. Once I know that it's that kind of exam, I can then ask for more help. So you could go to your teacher and say, I struggle with this part of the exam, for example. It could be something else that stresses you out, for example, public speaking. But once you identify what stresses you out, you can then spend a lot of time growing and building upon that. So just take a sit down and think, why am I stressed? What's caused me to be stressed right now? It's this. I'm going to start to work on this. So then once you know what stresses you out, you're then in a better mind space to be able to figure it out and then build upon it, which is really helpful.
And that so links in with what you were saying earlier, Holly, about talking about it as well, because sometimes when you're in the midst of a stressful situation, it can feel like a whole tree of stress, when actually when you kind of narrow it down, it might only be like a little acorn of stress, but it's just everything, you get into that headspace, don't you? But by weeding it out, that too many plant metaphors there, sorry.
No, that's definitely true, because once you're stressed, that's it, you've got these stress goggles on and everything you see is like the worst thing ever. But once you speak to people about it, especially someone close to you, like a parent, they can see, okay, you're stressed, let's sit down and work together to realize what's going on. And then it might be something, as you said, so minuscule that you can then work on it, everything will be okay.
Yeah, definitely.
I think as well with my stress, a lot of the time I'm stressing myself out. So it is kind of like what Khadija was saying, like you're not there to stop comparing yourself to others. Basically, you're there to do what you need to do. With public speaking, we're there to speak and get our points across, share our knowledge, listen to other people's. But we're not auditioning for a part in the West End. We're not there, we're not trained performance people, so we're doing our best with what we have, trying to make positive changes. So that's all really good, I think.
And for me, I think what Ellie said just is one of the things that I find was just most pivotal for myself personally with dealing with stress, is knowing that what you've done, you've tried your best, and you can't go back and change things, but you can move forward and make change going forward, which I think is the most amazing thing about things like failure or mistakes or hurdles that we reach along the way, is that we can grow so much from them. And just really putting that into everything you do, schoolwork, outside of school, and with just everything that you do, is just so important. So it's really lovely hearing the both of you, sharing those views that you have. And it's really amazing. It's really good stuff.
It's that growth mindset thing, isn't it, which I know is talked about a lot in schools these days. And it's that idea that it's not about being the best, it's about looking at where you are and thinking, what's the next step for me? That it's okay to not be the best, but just to know that you can always try your best.
Progress over perfection.
Oh, that's lovely. Oh, I love that.
That should be the name of this podcast.
Oh, yes.
The title of this podcast, Progress over Perfection.
Inspired by Ellie as well, because I watched what's that, Rowena Sai, I think she's from Thailand on YouTube, and she does like videos about self-care. So she basically reads loads of self-development books and then does like summarizes them all into YouTube videos and gives you like the best quotes. And she says, you know, set systems, not goals, because sometimes you feel quite disheartened if you haven't met your goal by like the said time. But as long as you're like progressing 1% a day or a week, like you're progressing. That's all that matters.
And growth is never linear, let's face it. It's never a straight line. It's always kind of weaves in and out and goes up and down, and you know, it does as you're physically growing. So why shouldn't it be when you're like mentally and emotionally and are growing as well? Yeah. Oh, there was one point about that we talked about when we were planning this podcast, was like how to avoid passing stress onto others. And I kind of want to add to that in like kind of following up on Ellie's example a little bit about how to stop others stressing you out as well. So if you've got a friend going, what, you don't know this, you know, how to kind of deal with people in a polite, like in a gentle way that's not, you know, but a firm way, and saying like, this is not helping me.
I think that's key, because I think like what you've just said, Kim, when I was reading the briefing thing about the podcast and I saw that you'd said, you know, how to not pass stress on to others, that's obviously you're very aware already of not passing that stress on, so you probably won't. But then also, like Holly was saying, talk about things, but then like Kim's just said, set your boundaries with your friends. Sometimes it is hard and sometimes friends might not understand, but I know like situations like that before, where a friend might want to meet you before an exam and you'll kind of just have to go like, what friend would I want to meet before that will have a good impact on me, you know, be calming and not stress me out before. And you might just have to say, oh no, sorry, I'm meeting this person, or no, sorry, I'm running late, but you might not be. It sounds mean, but it's to better you in the long run. Problem solving, and you know, if it's not going to make you feel good meeting up with that person, try and avoid.
No, definitely. It's kind of like, as what you've just said, Nick, is finding what works for you. So I was always, I couldn't be around anyone. I had to be in a quiet room on my own, because just looking at somebody else revise would stress me out. So I always had to like say to a teacher, look, is there somewhere I can go that's quiet before the exam? So that if that works for you, that's what you have to do. If sitting with all your friends, going through it and talking, that might work for you. So you just need to identify what works best for you. As you said, you could say, oh, I'm going to be late, because you'd rather spend a little bit more time at home revising than rather with your friends. So just see what works best for you and try to avoid the situations that you don't like. So if it makes you feel stressful, you have every right to say, I don't want to meet up with you, for example, to revise. Be polite about it, obviously don't be rude to your friends, but you have every right to say, I don't fancy doing that, I'd rather do this instead. So do remember that.
Have a think if anyone if anyone is listening to this podcast. That sounds really negative. Those of you that are listening to this podcast, maybe this is just a good opportunity to kind of ask yourself, like, A, what do I need in that moment that will help me? And B, am I somebody that maybe passes my stress on to others? And just having that little bit of moment of self-reflection and kind of thinking, okay, what do I need? What might other people need as well? Because it's about, you know, at times of stress, it's about looking after yourself, but also recognizing that if others are going through that same experience, that they might be having that same stress too. So just looking after yourselves, looking after each other.
And not putting pressure onto each other, because I feel like sometimes people are like, oh, I got a 7 out of 7, and they're like, oh, or they got like a 6 out of 7 and they wanted a 7, and they're like, oh, I did so badly. But then sometimes they don't realize that the people around them might have done worse. And I feel like we need to be really mindful of the way we speak to other people, and we need to be more positive. You know, because some people don't realize that. And as Nick said, don't be afraid to tell your friends to like not shut up, but you know, just be straightforward and tell them that you don't really appreciate it when they say stuff like that, because it can make you feel bad, and you should really make yourself a priority.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, so before I start to thank everyone, I want to give one more tip, which is something that's going to help everyone mentally, whether you're going through exams, whether you're stressed at the moment, whether you're not stressed. And it's a concept called casual magic, which is where you pick one thing. So out of your entire day, so say you're walking to work, you're walking to school, you're doing something every day, you pick out one thing that seems magical that day. I know it sounds kind of childish, the word magical, but
No, it doesn't.
yeah, so it came from the same YouTuber, Unjaded Jade. Gonna plug her again because definitely follow her. So she recently moved to Berlin, and obviously we're in lockdown now, so it's kind of hard to find things in your everyday life that are a bit different. But every day she notices one thing on like her way to the library or her way to grab a coffee or something. And so she'll just pick out something, like she'll be like, my casual magic today was that it was sunny, or that I saw a man and he looked really happy walking his dog. And like, you know, you might be having the worst day, but someone out there is having a really great day walking their dog. So be happy for them. They're your casual for the day.
I
And
love
they're
that.
going to keep you happy. So yeah, casual magic, everyone, every day. So yeah,
Love that.
I'll start by thanking everyone from the expert panel, because that's really helped me. So I'm sure it's really helped anyone doing exams, anyone in stressful situations. Just use these tips mentally and academically. They will help you. And just remember that failure is great, passing is great. Both of them teach you things that the other wouldn't. So anything that you're doing right now, you're doing to your best ability. And don't forget that you're great and you're not your grades. You're way more than that. So first, I'll signpost our wonderful Young Healthwatch Hillingdon Coronavirus Hub page, and P3 and Kooth. They'll all be signposted below.
Okay, and that was really inspiring, Ellie. Thank you for anyone that was listening to the podcast, and please look out for the next Young Healthwatch podcast. Thank you.
Bye everybody.
Bye.
Bye.